Perry Como's song became the first gold record in 1958, but he detested every moment of it. The startling reality now comes to light. He avoided recording sessions, referred to his biggest songs as garbage, and privately harbored dreams of a career that was entirely different. This is the sinister tale of America's most reluctant superstar, from the $25 million TV agreement that held him captive to the studio executive who attempted to ruin him. The story of Perry Como seems almost too good to be true. He was the seventh of 13 children born to an Italian immigrant family in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, on May 18, 1912. He didn't learn English until he entered school because his parents primarily spoke Italian at home. Given how easily he would go on to sing to millions of people throughout America, it's difficult to imagine now. Although there was always music in the home, luxuries like singing lessons were out of reach. Even though the family could not afford food, his father, a mill worker with a strong passion for music, made sure all of his kids learned to play an instrument. He once spent $3 on a used organ, which was a significant sum at the time. Perry, who was just beginning to walk, would play songs by ear by pressing the keys and pumping the bellows. He was not taught. He simply had the gift. Como began working when he was 10 years old. Earning only 50 cents a week, he accepted a job at a nearby barbershop before and after school. He excelled at the work and loved it. He had his own chair at the age of 13, but in order to get to his clients, he had to stand on a box. He never complained despite leading a difficult life. Then everything changed at the age of 14. Due to a severe cardiac disease, his father was unable to continue working. Como was forced to help out because the family needed money. Como handled it like a man twice his age, whereas most youngsters would have crumpled under the pressure. It was nearly unheard of for him to operate his own barbershop at the age of 14. He immediately established himself as one of the top barbers in the area due to the tremendous demand for his talents. However, it was more than just haircuts that drew customers in. Customers enjoyed Como's propensity of singing while he worked. He quickly gained a reputation among the local Greek families as the wedding barber. He sang for the grooms in addition to grooming them. He was earning $125 a week, a substantial sum of money in the late 1920s, because business was so robust. He had the opportunity to become a prosperous barber for the remainder of his life, but destiny had other ideas. He received an audition invitation from Freddie Carlin, a local bandleader, in 1933. Although Como had never given professional singing any thought, he decided it would be worthwhile. After landing the job, he took a shocking decision at the age of 21. He left his stable job as a barber to pursue a career in music. It wasn't simple. He traveled with the band for 5 years, earning about $28 a week, much less than he did as a barber. He didn't regret it, though. At the age of 24, Perry Como made a significant career move in 1936. When he joined Ted Weems' orchestra, he received a respectable salary of $50 per week, or almost $1,000 in today's currency. There was a dilemma, but it was also a big opportunity. He sounded too much like Bing Crosby, who was already a huge sensation, according to some people. Critics rejected Como as an imitator rather than applauding his talent. During a recording session with Decca Records in 1937, the situation deteriorated. A Decca executive barged into the studio while the band was performing. He was enraged. That boy sounded too much like Crosby, so he urged Weems to get rid of him. Como's career might have ended there if Weems had paid attention. Weems, however, declined. He informed the executive that there would be no recording at all if Como was not included. Though Como remained, the message was unmistakable. He needed to discover his own voice if he hoped to pursue a career in music. The critique continued. Which broadcast concerts by the Weems Orchestra threatened to cancel the event if Como didn't get better. Weems took a seat in front of him and played recordings of their previous shows. Como was taken aback. He became aware that he wasn't engaging the audience as he believed he was and that his statements were frequently ambiguous. At that point, Weems gave him some advice that he carried with him throughout his life. Give up trying so hard. Give up vocal tricks. And simply sing what's on your heart. Taking that counsel to heart, Como gradually cultivated the effortless, fluid technique that would lead to his fame. But it took time to achieve success. Everything changed in 1942. The Ted Weems Orchestra split when World War II broke out, and Weems and several of his members joined the Merchant Marines. Como lost his job all of a sudden. He had a little boy to maintain, was married, and was 30 years old. He gave quitting considerable consideration because he saw no obvious path in music. Como was a barber before he became a musician. And now he began to consider returning to it. To find out if they would accept him back, he even called his former barbershop in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. They were glad to. And Como was divided for weeks. Barbering was solid and dependable, but music had brought him some popularity. To get ready for what seemed to be the next phase of his life, he even rehearsed his abilities on friends and family. Then, RCA Victor called him just as he was ready to hang up the microphone for good. They desired to sign him. A consistent salary and radio appearances, which meant actual exposure, were included in the deal. Como discussed it with his wife and accepted the offer. He made the decision to try his hand at music one last time. Everything changed with that decision. He recorded Till the End of Time, a song based on a Chopin theme, 2 years later, in 1945. Everyone in the studio realized it was something remarkable as soon as he completed recording. The timing of the song's release was perfect. The Second World War was coming to a conclusion. And people were searching for normalcy and hope. For 10 weeks, the song remained at the top of the charts. It became his first gold record after selling more than 1 million copies. Later in life, Como would quip that his admirers need to give RCA Victor credit for preventing them from having haircuts rather than popular tunes. Como launched the seemingly straightforward song Catch a Falling Star in 1957, and it quickly became a huge hit. It sold more than 1.4 million copies in less than a month. Como was 46 at the time, but that was outstanding for any artist. He made it seem effortless, even when younger vocalists were taking over the charts. The song then became the first to be certified a gold record by the RIAA in 1958. It took home the inaugural Grammy for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance a year later. Millions of people were still enthralled by Como's classic approach at a time when rock and roll was taking control. Another song from the same album, Magic Moments, became a hit in the UK, while Catch a Falling Star was the biggest hit in the US. It held the top spot for 8 weeks in a row. Como achieved simultaneous success on both sides of the Atlantic without using any frills or flair. Como recorded a string of novelty tunes that dominated the charts in the 1950s and early 1960s. There was a lot of music, including Papa Loves Mambo, Hot Diggity, Dog Ziggity Boom, and Hoop Dada. They were memorable, entertaining, and catchy. Hot Diggity reached number 1 for 2 of its 21 weeks on the Billboard charts. Como received a gold record for it, and more than 1 million copies were sold. Papa Loves Mambo followed shortly after. It sold more than 500,000 copies and peaked at number 4. The post-war era, when people were looking for cheerful entertainment, was ideal for these tunes. Como, however, was not pleased. His silky baritone voice was ideal for sophisticated pop and ballads. Instead of singing about mambo and hot diggity dogs, he wanted to be renowned for those tunes. But the public wanted more of the funny, enjoyable songs. The novelty singles continued to define his career, regardless of the number of serious songs he recorded. He found it difficult to gain recognition in comparison to vocalists such as Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra. This division became evident in 1958. Como's 2 hit singles, Magic Moments and Catch a Falling Star, were released. Catch a Falling Star had a playful and lighthearted tone. It was the first single to receive a gold RIAA certification, becoming his 14th and last number 1 smash, and earned him the first ever Grammy for Best Male Vocal Performance. The tone of Burt Bacharach's Magic Moments was more refined. Despite being regarded by many as the superior song, it only peaked at number 4. This kept happening. One of his greatest songs, Hot Diggity, peaked at number 1 for 2 weeks in 1956. His more somber recordings, meanwhile, were disregarded. What his record label desired was the issue, not merely what the general audience enjoyed. Later on, Como acknowledged that recording these songs was his only option. He said that he only sung them because RCA insisted they would sell, calling several of them garbage. During the recording sessions, the irritation was evident. He detested performing these tunes, according to the musicians who collaborated with him. He would enter the studio, do a take or two, and then hurry out of there. He looked like he had just bitten into a lemon, recalled one session player. However, that didn't change his opinion of them. He made an attempt to alter the situation in 1961. He put out an album called Broadway Standards, which he regarded as some of his best work. Compared to his novelty singles, it didn't sell nearly as well. The public had already decided. Whether he liked it or not, Perry Como was the laid-back crooner of enjoyable, catchy songs. He considered his career in a 1998 interview. "I can't really complain because those tunes helped pay for my house and my children's college education. However, I would have preferred to sing the Great American Songbook for my whole career rather than crooning about Cupid dolls and hot diggity dogs." He had an oddly contradictory career. Millions of people liked him, yet he felt constrained by his own prosperity. He was not given the credit he deserved because of the songs that made him a legend. The enjoyable, breezy melodies are still the first that come to mind when people think of Perry Como. Beneath it all, though, was an artist who desired recognition for something more. His career on television was as impressive. From 1948 until 1963, The Perry Como Show was in operation, turning into one of the most well-liked variety shows of its era. It was the only NBC program to place in the top 10 Nielsen ratings by the 1956 to 1957 season. He had a knack of making the audience feel as though he was singing specifically for them, and they adored his relaxed and approachable style. Como sat on a stool and "Sing to Me, Mr. C," one of the show's most cherished portions, playing music that viewers have requested. The key difference was that it was straightforward but intimate. Como also contributed to the history of television. His program was one of the first weekly shows to air in color in September 1956. If networks didn't think a star could attract viewers, they wouldn't take such chances, and Como had gained their confidence. There was a light-hearted side to his presentation as well. Actor Kirk Douglas' 1955 guest appearance was one of the most talked about events. In lieu of cutting it off in privacy, Douglas allowed Como to do it live on television because he had grown a beard for his role as Vincent Van Gogh in Lust for Life. For weeks, audiences were talking about this spontaneous, humorous incident. Como's easygoing demeanor proved controversial. There were others who appreciated his easy, serene attractiveness. Others said he was too relaxed and slow. One time, comedian Jerry Lewis made a joke about "I'm Walking in My Sleep" being the theme song for Como. However, people misinterpreted him if they thought he was lazy. He didn't put up a show. It was just his nature. Life magazine polled young ladies in 1956 to find out who they believed would be the perfect husband. Neither a politician nor a movie celebrity was the winner. Perry Como was the one. He stood out in an age of fast-talking, high-energy celebrities because of his kindness and solid presence. Behind the scenes, that same laid-back vibe persisted. His show had a laid-back, enjoyable vibe. And some memorable situations resulted from that. One of the most well-known was when actress and Olympic swimmer Esther Williams appeared in 1957. A wardrobe mishap during the program almost became a big TV controversy. Como remained calm. Rather, he just grinned, said, "Good night, people," and dove fully dressed into the swimming pool that was constructed for Williams's performance. It was the ideal way to round off the evening. Perry Como secured a historic contract with Kraft Foods in 1959. At the time, the contract was the largest ever for a television artist, valued at $25 million. For the next 4 years, he hosted Perry Como's Kraft Music Hall every Wednesday night. The show then evolved into a monthly special that alternated with other shows including Andy Williams' Show and Kraft Suspense Theater. Business dealings were not handled by Como himself. Everything was handled by Ron Com, his production firm, including selecting what broadcast during his summer vacations. While he was away, viewers could still watch him in the 1959 launched special series Perry Presents. The Cuban Missile Crisis had recently ended in late 1962. And the eventual return of American servicemen's families to Guantanamo Bay. Como was invited to bring his act to the base by Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, who sought to boost morale there. Como consented, making him the first performer to come since the crisis. He and his team documented the euphoria of the homecoming families over the course of 8 days of filming. There were many noteworthy incidents in the show, which broadcast on December 12, 1962. In 1943, Perry Como signed a 7-year deal with 20th Century Fox because of his Hollywood-style appearance. But he wasn't a movie star only because of his appearance. March of Time, Dull Face, If I'm Lucky, and Something for the Boys are the 4 movies he produced for the studio. Additionally, he made an appearance in MGM's Words and Music. He never felt comfortable in front of the camera, even with the possibilities. He was aware that the roles did not suit him. Some wanted to change his life story since Hollywood is Hollywood. Coal miners sounded more dramatic than Barber, according to a press agent, who attempted to promote that version to the public. Como refused to accept it. Fred Hoffman, a cynical columnist, referred to the Barber aspect as a publicity trick. At the Fox Studios barbershop, Como sat him down and gave him a haircut and a real shave. That resolved that. His initial encounter on a movie set further strengthened his misgivings about the business. For 2 weeks without being called, he sat in his dressing room after reporting for work on Something for the Boys. He played golf for the next 2 weeks as he waited. The studio didn't really need him for 5 weeks. The director didn't know who he was when he eventually entered the set. Hollywood was that. Musicals were becoming less popular by the time Como signed. He filled out the schedule as needed, just like any other contract player. It didn't get any better, even after he got a role in one of MGM's major musicals, Words and Music. It was such a sloppy script that before the film's conclusion, his character's identity is changed from Eddie Anders to Perry Como. Columnist Walter Winchell called it out in print less than 2 weeks before it was released, claiming that someone at MGM must have been sleeping when they created it. Como didn't require further evidence. MGM granted his request to be removed from his contract. "I was wasting their time," he said. "They were squandering mine, too." Como accurately foresaw why he would never require Hollywood again in 1949 when performing the Chesterfield Supper Club on radio and television. "Movies will never benefit me as much personally as television will. The explanation ought to be clear. I'm free to be myself on television. I was always some other guy in photos. I arrive like any other tuxedo-wearing jerk." He was correct. Later, he received offers for movie roles, but he was too preoccupied with TV to give a damn. Roselle Bellin and Perry Como met at a picnic in Chartiers Creek, Pennsylvania. He was a barber at the age of 21. At the age of 19, she was unaware that she would soon meet the love of her life. Como did what he did best because he was attracted to her right away. He sang. You have no idea how much the song was. And it was successful. They connected easily. Their love story started suddenly. On July 31, 1933, they tied the knot in Meadville, Pennsylvania. The initial years were challenging. Como's band was always on the road, and money was seldom plentiful. They saved as much money as they could while living in tiny apartments. There were difficult moments for us. We were thrifty and survived on what he earned, even though money was tight. They remained united despite all the difficulties. They were already deeply in love, fame would follow. Roselle remained out of the spotlight while Como's career took off. She shielded their family from the demands of celebrity. At home, he was just Harry, yet he rose to national prominence. They had a remarkable 65-year marriage, which is practically unheard of in Hollywood. Roselle talked about her husband with the same affection she had from the beginning in 1998, a few days before their anniversary. I have never encountered a more kind and modest man than him. They had more in common than love. They were both from immigrant households. And were deeply rooted in Catholicism, their principles kept them centered. In Como's life, faith was a constant. He was brought up in a devout Catholic home and maintained his faith throughout his professional life. He never wavered from his principles, in contrast to many in Hollywood. Outside of work, he had a calm life and stayed out of scandals. He rose to prominence as one of America's top stars in the 1940s and 1950s. He remained loyal to himself despite all of the success. Como and Roselle celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary in 1958 by visiting Italy. They met privately with Pope Pius XII while on the trip. Como anticipated that the event would remain private, but the Vatican press office made pictures public. He was offended because he never wanted to exploit his faith as a means of gaining attention, not because he wanted to conceal it. Faith was personal to him. He made decisions based on that, but he never felt the need to make it public. He stood out from other celebs due to his reserved demeanor. Opportunities that did not align with his ideals were rejected. He opted for privacy over media attention. He ensured that he would be buried in a Catholic church after retiring to Florida. He never wavered from what was most important, even in death. In 1998, everything was different. Days after their anniversary, on August 12, Roselle died. Como was inconsolable. She had spent 65 years with him. He lost his sense of direction without her. He stayed out of the spotlight and hardly ever left his Jupiter, Florida, home. The annual tradition of his Christmas specials had already ceased in 1994. Once Roselle was gone, he refused all calls to come back. It was no longer about the spotlight. His health started to deteriorate. His family kept the fact that he had Alzheimer's a secret. They respected his private nature, which he had always maintained. He died in his sleep on May 12, 2001. Shortly before his 89th birthday. According to those close to him, he never fully healed from losing Roselle, even though the official cause was natural. The warmth, ease, and smoothness of Perry Como's voice made it sound familiar. He was more than just a vocalist. He was a presence in the entertainment industry, a composed and stable figure. Not only did he sing beautifully, but people tuned in to hear him. But because he gave them a sense of well-being. It is uncommon to have such a link. That explains why he received some of the greatest honors in television history and why his career lasted for decades. Como was the most dominant Emmy winner in the late 1950s. He defeated Eddie Fisher and Frank Sinatra to win Best Male Singer for the first time in 1955. He accomplished something even more remarkable a year later. In a single night, he took home 2 Emmys, one for Best Variety Series and one for Best Male Personality. Double victories like that hardly ever occurred. Then 1957 arrived. Nearly 1/3 of the nation, or 54.2 million people, watched his show. The ensuing Emmy victory seemed certain. The competition has become more difficult by 1958. Their shows frequently competed with one another in the ratings, and Jackie Gleason was a powerful figure in television. However, Como prevailed nonetheless. He took home the Emmy for the 5th time in a row in 1959. That has never been done by a man performer. For over 30 years, his record remained unbeaten. Not merely because of the honors, but also because of their significance, 1956 was a memorable year for Como. In February of that year, he was the first well-known vocalist to receive the Christopher Award, which is often bestowed upon works of serious art. He won the award for his Christmas Eve Spectacular, in which he moved millions of people with his rendition of Ave Maria. He and Jackie Gleason shared a Peabody Award a few months later. This was unprecedented. Typically, Peabody Awards were not given out. And most certainly not by 2 performers who are directly competing with one another. However, the committee thought they were unique. They were both meticulous. Both maintained the highest standards for their performances. They remained friends in spite of their rivalry. They frequently called one another after their shows to simply joke about the ratings war. Como had been in semi-retirement for almost 30 years by 1990. His influence on television, however, had remained constant. He joined luminaries like Walt Disney and Lucille Ball when he was elected into the Television Hall of Fame that year. This was the first time his induction had been approved by every single member of the voting committee. Como gave a succinct 90-second acceptance speech at the ceremony, which was attended by notable figures in the business. Making a big deal out of himself had never been his style. He was commended by the Hall of Fame committee for establishing the concept of variety shows and for making television feel more relaxed and friendly. They also mentioned his contributions to the industry's transformation. One of the first artists to pre-record their performances was Como. This practice eventually spread. In 1987, he was awarded the Kennedy Center Honor, one of the highest accolades of his career. He was that year's oldest recipient, at 75. Joining a select group that included Alvin Ailey and Betty Davis. President Ronald Reagan and First Lady Nancy Reagan were present for the ceremony. The tribute to Como was not like any other. Producers replicated his famous Sing to Me, Mr. C double prime portion rather than just performing his tunes. Fan letters covering 50 years of memories were read out loud. He was overcome by the situation, but Frank Sinatra's arrival on stage was the night's biggest surprise. They had been viewed as competitors for years, with people constantly contrasting their approaches. Few anticipated Sinatra's admission that evening. Como's easy charm had always made him a touch envious. A standing ovation marked the conclusion of the memorial. Fame was never Perry Como's goal. He attracted attention by making everything appear simple, even when it wasn't. Even if his accolades were stunning, they merely confirmed what his fans already knew. He was a unique individual.